Somewhere in the last couple years, you've started drifting into a version of yourself that you wouldn't actually choose. And it's happened so gradually that you probably haven't noticed yet. And these signs start to show up as a persistent tiredness, brain fog, potentially waking up dreading your calendar each and every day. But those are just symptoms that are now surfacing years past when that shift actually began. In this video, I'm going to show you the exact 3-stage sequence that takes a high performer and turns them into a version of themselves that they don't even recognize. And more importantly, I'm gonna walk you through how you can tell which stage you're in right now and what you need to do about it before things progress even further. Quick context, I'm Jesse Hoffman, performance coach and founder of the Clarity Code. I work with high performers across 4 continents, from elite athletes to early stage entrepreneurs to founders running 6 to 8 figure operations, all of whom are trying to scale, but all seem to be hitting ceilings that more strategy and harder work will not solve. Before we dive into this, if that sounds like you at all and you're ready to get working on this directly, the link to apply and have a full coaching session with me is right in the description below. You can check that out. Now let's dive in. Now, every case of this, every client that I've worked with who's experiencing something like what I just described, they've all run through the same 3 stages. I call it the drift sequence. Stage 1 is role confusion. Stage 2 is value compromised. Stage 3 is identity erosion. And by the time you're in stage 3, that's when you really start to feel something, because stages 1 and 2 are a bit more silent, which is exactly why that 2-year gap exists. And this applies across almost every industry. Someone gets into something, whether it's a sport or a business, and they work their ass off. And over the course of that first year, maybe the second, they get to a point where they plateau. And most people give up. And so the conversation stops right there. But for those of you who have pushed through, all of this is now catching up to you. So let's dive into stage 1, but make sure to stick around all the way through all 3 stages, because by the time we get to the end, you'll be able to properly diagnose what you're feeling and why and what to do about it. So you need to hear all 3. Now, the thing with role confusion is, for most people, it doesn't look like a problem. It feels a little bit like flexibility, like the autonomy that most people start their businesses for, which means you're the founder, you're the salesperson, you're the IT guy, you're the ops person, marketing, that person who jumps on a call with a client that nobody else wants to handle. That feels responsible. It feels like ownership. But when every role belongs to you by default instead of by decision and by design, you don't have a business. You have a job with unlimited hours attached to it. You have a nice and shiny prison, golden handcuffs. Now, where this role confusion starts fundamentally is through a few things. And almost every business owner, entrepreneur, solopreneur that I've ever worked with stumbles through these same issues. The first clear and obvious reason why this happens is from unclear roles and responsibilities. If you start a business, you need to treat it like a business. You need an org chart that defines the roles and responsibilities of those roles within your organization, even if you are the majority or all of those roles. And the second reason, when you don't have that, you more than likely don't have clear systems, key indicators, SOPs, KPIs, data points that determine performance, that allow you to measure your results. And that blends with not having clear enough goals and expectations. And those are goals that you have for yourself as the owner, but also goals that you have for the business, goals that you have for your employees, and those expectations follow as well with how clearly or not you communicate what your expectations are for yourself and what your expectations are of your employees. Defined roles that have an edge, a boundary, where your responsibility actually ends and someone else's begins, that is what needs to be in place. Otherwise, stage 1 happens immediately. As soon as you don't have that clear boundary, that line in the sand, everything becomes blurred. Stage 1 progresses. So you can't keep telling yourself that you're just being flexible and you're taking ownership over your business and holding on to all of that pride. You might think it makes you adaptable, but flexibility without boundaries is not adaptability. It's just the beginning of a few small micro compromises at a time as things continue to break down. And because it happens so deep beneath the surface, it only compounds. It only gets worse and worse. So it goes from small little decisions and compromises in your business to something deeper. And that brings us to stage 2, which is your value compromise. And that's when you feel like you're still saying the right things. Family first, health matters, gotta go work out. Deep work matters, but your calendar has stopped agreeing with you for months and months and months, and you've stopped noticing the gap because you're so caught up in these compounding compromises. You tell yourself you're holding on to these values, that this is still what's important to you, but your actions aren't aligning with that. And a value that you state but don't operate through is not a value. It's the memory of one that you once had. If you're in this stage right now, it's detectable by one very simple and honest question that you need to ask yourself. If you take a look at your last handful of decisions, let's say 10 decisions that you made in this week, did those decisions that you made match what you claim matters? Or did they just match whatever noise was loudest that day? Whatever felt like it was something that was important to take action on. A feeling is different from a value. It's a tough one to answer because we are wired to justify things, to preserve our safety and our progress. And that's the hard thing about business and life in general. There are threats, fears that inundate our day-to-day, but we have to have systems and values to hold us to a certain standard to push through those. And the reason that stage 2 is also so quiet and flies under the radar is because you don't drift from all of your values all at once. You drift slowly from one reasonable sounding exception at a time. You flex a little bit here, you justify there, until you get to the point where you're so far off the track from what really matters to you deep down, from what you say your values are, that you begin to not recognize yourself. And so every client that I work with that finds themselves in this stage of being a bit disconnected from their values, it's important to go back in and create a set of operating values that align with certain daily, weekly, and monthly commitments, actions that you take every single day to reinforce that this is who you are. This is what matters to you. Without doing that, you will undoubtedly progress to stage 3, which is identity erosion. And this is the stage that people actually notice, that becomes louder and louder and louder the longer it perpetuates. And by the time you actually feel it and see it, you think that it's just started. You find yourself falling flat in areas where you used to be pretty sharp. Maybe you're still working the long hours, you're showing up present physically, but mentally you are somewhere else. And that version of you who used to make fast, confident decisions is somewhere underneath the version of you that now just reacts to shit all day, constantly putting out fires. This is when you start to hear words like burnout. What people call burnout is usually just the moment that stage 3 becomes loud enough to really hear. No amount of rest, vacations, Netflix and chill will fix stage 3. Passive rest might treat the volume of the stage that you're in and make things a little bit quieter and more manageable, make you feel just good enough to keep moving forward, but it's not actually going to get deep to the source of what's going on. Through knowing stages 1 and 2 now, the only fix for stage 3 is bringing yourself all the way back, rebuilding all of the roles and boundaries, overhauling your business so that it can finally mirror all of those things that disappeared years ago, so that you can have something that actually aligns with who you say you are, who you prove you are, and what truly matters to you. I'm going to give you a specific example of a founder that I've worked with. But before I do that, if the stages that I just broke down sound anything like the experiences that you've had as a business owner, as a professional, then hit the subscribe button, like this video, and maybe even drop a comment with what stage you feel like you're in right now. I had a founder that came to me running a multiple 7-figure agency. And what they described was dreading the day, brain fog, just feeling flat and unclear of what to take action on a day-to-day. When we took the time to map out what the previous 2 years looked like leading up to working with me, what we found was that the breakdown started to happen about 1.5 years prior to when he actually started feeling it. For context, he was selling products on TikTok Shop and had scaled the business to multiple 6 figures per month. And even though he was slowly building out the team, because that's what a good business owner does, is hire more people, he was still filling up a van with products and dropping them off at the post office himself, the owner of a business making $500,000 a month. In addition to that, because they were just hiring to hire, they had a few bad hires to where he had to absorb roles that otherwise should have had clearer boundaries. But he was just so frustrated that the first instinct wasn't to go and rehire the right way and redefine the roles and responsibilities, redefine those boundaries in a way that aligns with what his goals and intentions were for how he wanted to show up in his business. No, he pushed it off, and as a prideful business owner does, he started to do everything himself again. And then everything after that was just stage 2 and stage 3 compounding so quickly that it all felt like it was playing out at once. And once we sat down and rebuilt that role structure, very simply, in a matter of minutes, just rebuild the intended role structure and then make him clear again on why he started his business, where he felt he was best to show up in his business, and why it really mattered to him, the deeper purpose behind it. All that exhaustion, that dread lifted within a matter of weeks, not months, not a year, simply because we went back to the basics and started treating each stage. And it's nearly impossible to do it yourself because we don't really have the objectivity to know where's the breakdown happening. And so the reason why this matters, well beyond any video of mine or anyone else's that just talks about burnout prevention, is timing. And aside from the fact that burnout is a very poorly defined term to begin with for most people, if you can identify which stage you're actually in, you can fix it at that stage before it progresses into something more. Because if things escalate and get worse under the radar, by that point, that can take months to resolve and usually ends up costing people relationships, tons of money, opportunity, health. And this is exactly why more like tools, strategies, delegation, more AI, all of that just accelerates whatever stage you're at. And if that internal structure beneath the surface is already broken, all that horsepower that you get from more systems and strategies and tools just accelerates that drift and speeds up the same collapse. So, do you have any idea what stage you could be in? If you don't, and you're unclear on what parts of your performance are falling flat and where you need to improve, I have a diagnostic that addresses this directly. It's called the Clear Diagnostic. It's linked below in the description. It takes about 4 minutes and it'll feed you back with a personalized score that tells you exactly where your system is leaking. But if you're ready to work on this directly and you'd rather stop the bleed now before things progress any further, the link to apply to work with me is below in the description. You can fill that out and get a full clarity call with me where we'll go in and architect the solution to your unique situation. And as you go to do that, I have one final action step that I want you to take tonight. Pick one role that you're currently holding by default instead of by decision. Write down what that boundary should be. And not only for the purpose of the business, but for you and your identity and the way that you want to show up for yourself and others around you. Then why is that boundary important? And what does it look like when that boundary becomes a little bit blurred so that you can recognize it and stop yourself? I'm hoping if you made it this far, then this has been helpful for you. If so, hit that subscribe button, like the video. I really want to boost the algorithm here so I can get these videos in front of more and more people. As you can probably see, I could use the help. But in all seriousness, I hope you have a great one. Keep crushing. Peace.